Welcome to Application, the TYPO3 Community Podcast. 1, 2. Welcome to Application, the TYPO3 Community Podcast. I'm Jeffrey A. McGuire. You can call me Jam. And this is where we celebrate the TYPO3 community, sharing your stories, talking about your projects and the difference you make in, around, and with TYPO3 CMS. Today on Application, the TYPO3 Community Podcast, I talk with Mathias Schreiber, longtime community member and now CEO of the TYPO3 company, TYPO3 GmbH, for the last 5 or 6 years. We roll it all the way back to his discovery of TYPO3 in a newspaper ad in 2001 on actual paper. The TYPO3 company, I like to think of it as our friend and helper. The company is here to help all of us get more out of TYPO3 with products and services. Mathias talks about the company's role as being an unblocker, which I like a lot. We go into some depth about TYPO3 in the international, outside of Europe context, and go into some interesting detail about how TYPO3 associated people and programs are helping people in Africa and how you could make donations of time, money, or your old equipment to help more people change their lives with open source technology. And relatively late in our conversation, Mathias said something that I found very wise that we should all keep in mind. The most important question when building software to ask yourself is, does it help a human? So on that note, I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I enjoyed speaking with Mathias to record it. Mathias, you have been in TYPO3 in one role or another for a very long time. Who are you? What do you do personally and professionally? And how did you discover TYPO3?
Maybe start at the beginning. So I discovered TYPO3 when there was a really old school ad in a newspaper that my former girlfriend then just showed me, which just said like PHP, HTML, CSS, JavaScript ? And a phone number. And I answered to that because I was looking for a job anyways. Back in the day, that was Netfielders in Düsseldorf, and they were looking for obviously PHP and web development person to hire, and they were doing TYPO3 all the time. So that was like the only system they specialized on, and that was 2002, I guess. Yeah, it must have been 2001 or 2002.
That's pretty early. What version of TYPO3 was that?
I joined the company when version 3.3 beta something came out, but I had to spend, I think, like the first 2 weeks with an older version so that I was able to appreciate all the new stuff that Casper had put into the system. And I was just like, yeah, great. Why did I need to go through this? I never need to maintain this anymore. And he was like, yeah, but someone always remember where you come from. I was like, I didn't come from this, but okay, never mind. What's also important is that my bosses, they wanted to make sure that all employees kind of get into the community. So that was the basic idea. So I had like a dedicated day per week just to answer stuff on the mailing lists. We were going to every event there was. To be fair, there weren't that many. There was like the snowboard tour. Where Casper just had the idea to get like 100 nerds onto a mountain, like what could go wrong. And then I think there was like a user group meeting once, and it was like a huge thing. It was hosted by the University of Wuppertal, I think, because they also use TYPO3 and stuff like that. So this entire approach of being part of the community and giving back and like helping and basically what community work is, that was really kind of a priority. Also because there wasn't that much documentation. So I remember that there was like this one guy, René Fritz, who had like a single page of explaining how to do things in TYPO3, and that was like standard bookmark that everybody had to use because there was no docs on how to extend the system properly. So that was that. And then I went through all the processes with the release of TYPO3 version 3.30, which had no extensions. So there was no modular approach to the system at all. It was just all in there. So you were installing TYPO3 and you had like a forum and you had a shop and you had a newsletter system and you had a guest book and you had like a tip a friend extension and all those kind of things. It was all just weaved in and you couldn't remove it. It was just in there. And then
you couldn't extend it either.
Well, yeah, you could, but you had to put like files at a certain place and you had to know where, and there was no clean API to do it. You could do it. Let's just say you could do it. Pretty much like, I don't know, like living on the 12th floor and not having an elevator. Like you can do it. It's just not fun, right? And then Casper just took off for I think 6-week vacation, and everybody was like, yeah, you go have your vacation and we'll take care of the upgrading stuff. And then he came back after 6 weeks.
And he came back with
extensions, and that was like everybody was like, and he didn't even announce that, because back in the day it was just like, I mean, the typo3.org server was located in his living room, Denmark.
Nice.
And then at a certain point he started doing screen recordings. So we're talking 2002, medium definition video hosted on Casper's 2.3 megabit line at home, and Casper just sent out an email and was like, this is the future of TYPO3. So everybody clicked the link at the same time. So you had to wait like for 5 to 6 hours to get like the first 20 frames of the video, and everybody was like, okay, what the hell's going on?
And broke the internet in Denmark.
Well, no, he broke his own internet, and he was really pissed about that at a certain point, because he was just like, wow, I can no longer surf, and my wife's freaking out. Like that, because that was his fixed connection line at home. And then extensions showed up. That was when TYPO3 basically took off. Then after, I mean, I kept working at NetFielders. Then NetFielders fell apart. Then I started my own agency. And at a certain point, I was talking to my business partners and going like, I have a great idea. I want to keep getting my salary for 2 years, but no longer work in the company. Instead, I want to be available for TYPO3 full time and deal with stuff. So that was the basic idea. Luckily, the business partners agreed, so we did that. And
which company was that?
That was WMDB. And after that, at a certain point, there was this transition from the major version 4.5, which was the first long-term supported version, to the next long-term supported version. And people were like, wow, now we need to upgrade everything. And we were like, yep, that's what you got to do. And people were like, yeah, but it has come so early. It's a surprise. And we're like, yeah, we've been only telling it to you for 3 years. So arguably, it's like people always get surprised when it's Christmas time suddenly. Of course, everybody asks, well, is there a possibility that you can maintain TYPO3 version 4.5 for even longer? And the community was just like, hell no. Because if you think of it, it's like developers are motivated by seeing their stuff out in the world.
Yes.
So the longer you support the old stuff, the more you work against motivation of open source development. It's the currency, right? The currency.
Yeah, and the semantic versioning that allows us to put in new features and fix things within major versions is definitely a motivational tool, because if I have a good idea, I could see it in core in 6 months if it's a great idea, or a year if it's a good idea. And I've been through other communities 3, 4, 5 year release cycles where my great idea from 5 years ago still hasn't appeared. It's sitting in a repo somewhere that nobody uses for production stuff. That can be unbelievably frustrating.
Exactly. And so I was, and I mean, you can't really blame anyone, because I mean, there was nobody in charge of the project on such topics. Of course, there were Benny and Lolly and Helmut and I've like a long list of people that took responsibility and really did great stuff. But suddenly there was this like market perspective coming in, and people from the market demanding stuff. And I can't blame any one of them for not having an answer to such a question. Like, do we support it for longer? We don't want to, but what do we do with the market situation? Blah, blah, blah. And then I was just like, well, is it a huge problem?
Essentially these people were also volunteers, right?
Everybody
were making demands.
Everybody
were making demands from open source volunteers.
You could basically just put it together like this. So you're getting software for free off the internet. You just download it. You make a living from that. And of course, that kind of entitles you for demands, right?
Yes.
Exactly. And this is just like was
sarcasm tag.
Exactly. It's like my mom always said that the Lord has blessed thee with two healthy middle fingers for situations like this. And and it wasn't necessarily that, but I was just like, okay, so obviously there's some pain with the people that don't want to upgrade, and that they forgot to sell upgrades to their clients. And I was like, well, we've been telling you for 3 years, technically we're out. Like, we told you what to do, you didn't listen. But if that's really such a big pain point that you have, then maybe you have cash. So the entire idea was that, well, yes, we can maintain the old version for longer, but it's going to cost you. Mainly because I need to find someone to actually do the work, and I want to pay that person, because I cannot tell them to do that in their spare time. That's not how I roll. It's not even motivation. But if I ask somebody to do something they don't like or they don't want to do from the bottom of their heart, I can at least go like, well, can I compensate for all the hardships that you're going through right now? So we did that. That worked out better than we expected, and suddenly there was like money available. I could have taken the money and, I don't know, like, bought a house or two, something like that. We decided to invest that into people who wanted to do more for TYPO3 as open source, but couldn't, because they were blocked by simple financial topics. It's like, I want to work on TYPO3 full time, all day. Who's going to pay my rent? And suddenly it was like,
Yeah.
I could do that.
Oh.
So that was the basic idea. And also, I was able to call up the bosses of people who wanted to contribute, and basically just go like, hey, can you make me an offer if I take that developer from your company for a full year and I pay upfront? And suddenly you can move things
as an agency owner. The idea of, I know that I've got that person at 100% capacity and paid for upfront, fantastic.
So the capacity thing is fine, because I know that, okay, so I don't have to worry about getting like jobs in to pay that person. That's the one part. The upfront payment is what actually negotiates the discount. This is basically what we did. And at a certain point, the TYPO3 Association came up with the idea to found a company around that thing we invented. So the support extensions, so that you have like support for a longer time frame for the old versions, basically. So the idea came to build a company based on that, and I was involved in the staffing process. Frankly, all the job applications that we got for the CEO position were just horrible. And at a certain point, I was constantly looking through that and started questioning my life choices, right? Because it says like, well, you need like a master's in business administration and stuff like that, right? And I was like, well, if you would have studied, you stupid idiot, then you could have taken the job. But I guess that's how it is. And, like, your mom was right and all your teachers were right and stuff like that.
You got to work with the web and go snowboarding and call it work as well. So it's not the worst life choice.
No, not necessarily, but it was just like, looking at the CVs of the people that applied, it was just like, it was horrible, man. It was really, really horrible. And at a certain point, it was just the discussion like, okay, so who of the three do we pick? And one was just worse than the other. And for me, it felt like, okay, so what do you want? Like pest or cholera? Like, choose one, choose wisely. And at a certain point, I remember that because I was sitting in the middle of a conference room with like 25 people around me. And was like, they were discussing one specific candidate. And I was like, you know what? If you take that idiot, I can just do it myself. And then suddenly there was like a hush that fell over the room, and everybody started looking at me, and I was like, whoops. Maybe I should have kept my mouth shut this time. And then I think it was Rick who was just asking, like, yeah, but would you do it? Sure, I know. I guess I know how to run a business. I invented all the products you're trying the other guy to sell. Yeah, why not? And then I became CEO of the company. So that's that story, basically. Like, not keeping your mouth shut at an opportune moment, I guess.
One of the things that I deeply appreciate in the TYPO3 community compared to some others is, for me, the community seems incredibly well balanced and very well thought out. And the fact of having a community with an association that's very stable and very structured, not for structure's sake, but there's a bunch of people
Very
who really
German, yeah.
take care of it. And then over time, the community as a collective, to a large degree, recognized a legitimate need to have commercial services and extended those out of the association. So the company that you run today is 100% subsidiary of the nonprofit TYPO3 Association.
Correct.
So your articles of incorporation specifically forbid you, for example, from competing with businesses of other community members. You're there to serve first. And I have the intuition that that's frustrating for you sometime, but I think it puts some handcuffs on you sometimes about which directions you might or might not go. But on the other hand, you have a really clean situation compared to some of the other communities where founders and business interests and technology interests and directions and stuff are not perfectly clear, and it's not always clear what hat someone is wearing at a given time.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing is being clear about something. The other thing is having like the full force of the law behind that, because it's in the founding documents. So technically, just to give it like an example, like you cannot call us and say build this TYPO3 project for us, because that's for the members of the association to do. There are a lot of like really, really great agencies, and they could do such things. If I would take up such a project, if I would decide to do that, I would be fully privately liable for all the damage done. So it's like we're serious about this. The place where I did my apprenticeship, my boss walked up to me at some point. I don't remember what the topic was. And he was just like, so we're in agreement about whatever topic. And I was like, yeah. And he was like, great, let's write that down. Let's just write down that we're in agreement, because maybe in 6 months, we're no longer in agreement, and then it's good that we can read that we were in agreement once. So this is something there's no shortcut, there's no backdoor that we can pick, and we did this because we wanted to make extra sure that everybody understood that we're serious about this, because of course there was a lot of uncertainty and people were unsure what to expect from a service company. Of a lot of agencies which were just like, wow, competition, and I paid for that because I'm a member of the association and stuff like that. And I could just always the same thing. I would just pull out a piece of paper and like read that, like paragraph 6, read what it says. And so everybody was like, oh, so you cannot compete.
The company's been around for about 4 years now, is that right?
5.5.
Getting on 5?
5.5. Yeah.
Okay, so in real time, we're speaking in October 2020. I'm interested in what you do or what the GmbH does every day in and around and for the community. And I'm interested in the development of those attitudes in the community. Have people come along? Do you have more believers now? Is the relationship clear?
From time to time, things pop up where so there's a lot of, I don't know, mistrust, I guess.
Still.
And to be honest, I'm not sure whether this has anything to do with what the company does. Everything the company does can be looked up in the records of the association. All numbers are there. I think that this common vibe of mistrust is something that's happening around the world, everywhere right now. So there's people saying there is no pandemic. A lot of people that they see something and it works, and they don't understand why it works. They don't want to look those things up, and I'm not judging them for that. Right? It's just like an observation. They don't want to look things up, and they just go for an easy answer, I guess. The good thing is that there's nothing that I wouldn't like put on public record anytime, mainly because the company is on public record anyways. So this is stuff that happens. Luckily, we can clear these things up. The only part that's a bit fatiguing, I guess, is that it's the same people coming up every 3 to 4 years, and you have to re-explain to them that no, we're still not doing projects, we're still not like snatching off your clients, because it's still in writing and nothing has changed. And since it's in the founding documents of the company, you can't just simply take that out. So we had technically, from a legal point of view, we'd have to terminate the company and then rebuild it. And this is something you would notice
And for those of you who haven't experienced German bureaucracy, that is not a small undertaking. It's not something that you would do casually over a weekend.
Well, I mean, it's Switzerland and Germany, right? So the Type 3 Association is located in Switzerland. The company is located in Germany. You would imagine like it's not a hard thing, but technically it's an international business endeavor to do that. And it's not even that EU laws apply because Switzerland's not in the EU.
In this community structure, the Type 3 community, there's a lot of web professionals, a lot of agencies. I think that stems from Type 3's origins and its design as a system built by professionals to deliver professional projects. And then the association has the very fortunate position of dealing with professionals who understand that it's okay to pay for a service. So that overall the community has a decent amount of funding and can enable itself to have organized release processes and all of these really nice things. I'd like to just go through how the GmbH fits in there and the sort of things, the way that you provide some advantages. Maybe the starting point for that could be the fact that Type 3 actually has a contributor agreement, which lets you step up as an official vendor where some other projects can't have an official vendor.
That's part of the core, right? So this makes things really easy for us because there's this legal point that makes sense. The interesting part is the original plan was to have a dedicated product development roadmap. So the idea was to create more products, create a marketplace, stuff like that. It turns out that our main task right now is to keep the community things functional in case there's stuff that needs to be done. So we're taking care of sending out the certificates in print, for example. So all the stupid things like postal, like really snail mail postal services. You know, like if you do certification, you need to get your certificate, and it's a physical thing, right? Somebody has to like put it into a printer and then stuff it into an envelope and put like a proper address on it and then send it out. And what if the address is wrong? People need to take care of those things.
So you inherited that. Lucky you. Another parentheses here, the Type 3 community also has a certification program that is run and planned and organized by the community, which seems to me to be yet another sign that the community really functions as a community and has done a great job of helping each other out and not, eating each other too much.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're still sticking to the principle of unblocking people. So imagine, let's just stick to certifications. There's a lot of work in doing a certification. Like you need to check whether your question and answers are still valid. You need to figure out certification schemes, different courses, and have something like a syllabus, all those things that need to be done. And then there's also another side of that, which is like the really boring stuff, like sending out postal things, like things that are basically blocking you from the, I'd call it creative process of, like creating something rather than just like the maintenance that needs to be done to keep those things like functioning. And same goes for stuff where I'd say the size of the project that needs to be developed is too big to be put on the shoulders of volunteers. So we built a system where you can now do your certification online without it being just a simple multiple choice thing that you can just reload every as often until you have like all the answers right. So
it's properly proctored and has some official value and all of that.
Exactly. And in order to do that, you need to be able to buy a certification, right? So suddenly we're talking e-commerce. So in order to have a valid certification, this all needs to be connected to your mytypo3.org account. And suddenly you have like 3 different community teams that you would need to get together in one room to do all the necessary code development on mytypo3.org on the one hand, so that you can have an account to buy something, then e-commerce so that you can buy something with the account you just created, and then we need to get the entire online certification stuff on the road, right? So suddenly it's 3 things, and the project gets so big that it's not realistic to expect somebody to do that in their spare time.
You could never ask volunteers to cover all of that.
Not within like a given period of, I think it was half a year. That was the original plan, to build that within half a year. So this is stuff we take over. So we basically didn't develop something like a marketplace or new SLA products or whatever. So we just built this for the community. And the next thing that we're doing is that like we're taking over the management of the members of the TYPO3 association. So the boring stuff, like people calling like, hey, our address has changed, can you please change that? Or there's the we rebuilt the company, we reformed the company, it's now a different name, and can you update that information? And here's a new VAT ID, right? So
okay,
all the boring stuff.
Right. So you called that unblocking. If we can also call that community enablement, I think, and it's great for the rest of the community that there's that you're there to do that for them. And luckily, between the association and your commercial products, you can finance these things. But I think it's interesting that people are still quote unquote afraid of you sometimes, or critical, given I like the way you identified unblocking as a mission. How does that fit into the partner program that you have?
The partner program, we just relaunched that like 4 weeks ago. The reason behind that was our initial idea for a partner program was extremely high quality, which of course meant that a lot of hurdles that you needed to take. You had to have like a certain amount of people that were certified within your company. You needed to give us 2 projects per year to review. So that the entire idea was like, when somebody calls us as the TYPO3 company and asks us, who should I partner with? Our answer had to be right all the time. So in order to make sure we would give the right answers, we would need to see how you work in detail. And this was an approach which was very time consuming, because we had to check all these things. Then agencies had legal issues handing out the projects to third parties, which is also
the classic case study story. Yeah,
not necessarily the case study, but now we're talking the code, because we were looking at the code and the development sees everything's done properly. So this was something we just didn't think about that. All those kind of things. And then I went to the CMS summit in Cape Town and got in closer touch with the African community. And since we were running this high quality, high reward kind of partner program, we just realized that we completely missed a price point outside of, say, the Western world. So for people from the US or from Canada, no problem. Australia, fine. But if you go to countries like Africa or India, for example, or even east of, say, Hungary or something like that, suddenly pricing is a lot different. And so we basically said, okay, we want to change the way the partner program works. So we basically dropped the entire idea and rebuild it into a professional service listing, which basically means like you're doing something with TYPO3, you can have your name, your city, and the country you're in on the website just for free, just like that. And then you can buy like small upgrades to that. So you want to have a logo or a backlink or a detailed description or a contact form, like all those small little bits and pieces that you can put in there, and you could just buy them, subscribe to them, and you're good to go. The thing that we did differently, I guess, from at least most of the things I've seen so far, is that we import the buying power per dollar per country. So that's what we import every night, and then recalculate the pricing based on the current buying power you have. So
how interesting.
So it's €5 in Germany, and it's the equivalent to €5 in Zimbabwe, which technically maybe means 26 cents or something.
But in Switzerland it would be 30 euros or
something like that, or Swiss francs, so or whatever, right?
So there's a formula of well-being, median income, GDP, currency value, et cetera.
It's super complex. So there's this thing called
fantastic idea though of like in terms of unblocking and fairness and
equality. I think it's about equality.
And getting TYPO3 and getting TYPO3 out into the world. Because the people doing TYPO3 are passionate and very committed to the open source ideas. And I think fairness comes very high on a lot of people's lists, right?
Yeah, and I think it has something to do with well, of course it's supposed to be fair. I think it's a lot about equality, economic equality, which is something which is incredibly hard to achieve, I guess. The main purpose was that people argue that they pay, I don't know, like $200 per year for their professional service listing, and it hurts their business. The only thing we wanted to make sure is that, I mean, $200 in a place like Zimbabwe, for example, that's like, I don't know, half a year's salary.
Yeah.
That hurts a lot more than $200, which is technically just means like, I don't know, shut off the heat at the right time over the course of the year, right? That was the main goal, to make that attainable for everyone. And it's really hard because there's a lot of different things. So there's this thing called the Big Mac Index, which has been done, I think, like once a year by comparing the Big Mac sales prices all over the world. The problem with that is that they only work based on currency. It takes the average median euro price for a burger, which in Greece is drastically different than in Germany, for example. We wanted to get out of that thing and like make it really, really fair. So we went with the data from the World Bank, which was like the most reliable thing we found so up to date. So that's the entire plan.
So a few years ago, TYPO3 was on the world stage and doing all right, and there was an event in Dallas, I think, in the US, and then the community went through some difficult times. And the project that I know and love today is, as we've been talking about, highly professionalized and has a really strong agency base. And now there are starting to be really, really strong roots coming out of Central Europe again.
Yeah.
And you see people in India adopting it and doing some sprints and some really nice work there, and in Eastern Europe as well, especially Romania, right? A little bit in Canada, a little bit in the US. So some community people are popping up, which is exciting. I was wondering, the government of Rwanda has a bunch of TYPO3 infrastructure. Where else is TYPO3 happening that's kind of exciting or interesting or unexpected?
Unexpected. I mean, there's interesting things happening in Central Africa. So there's people from Gabon, there's people from Burkina Faso, there's people from Ghana. So it seems to be that I grew up in the music business, and kind of everybody knows everyone, right? So if you go to some, I don't know, some trade fair, to the NAMM show, for example, it's like the guitar player of Metallica is like high-fiving the guitar player of, I don't know, some pop band, because they kind of know each other. Seems to be that people from governments in Africa kind of work the same way. So they kind of, they all know each other somehow. And they're always like peeking over. So, okay, so what are they doing right now? And Rwanda is like this really great example of how you can turn something around that you would call a failed state, I guess. So if you take a look at Rwandan history, there's been genocide not too long ago, stuff like that. But they really turned the country around, and it's amazing. It's really, really great. And they took some bold decisions. So my personal favorite is that they banned plastic in the country, in the entire country. And there's even to a degree that when I moved, I didn't move. When I went to Rwanda, I was asked whether I was smoking. And I said yes, and so the guy wanted to have all my cigarettes, and then like just tore the plastic paper off the cigarettes and says, "Well, sir, plastic is banned in the country, but enjoy your stay. Here's your cigarettes back." So they're really serious about that, and to me, it's really inspiring, because it shows we can work with a lot less plastic, and it works. Like there's no sicknesses spreading all around, like everybody's like fear mongering within the EU, I guess. I went down there, I ate there, I lived, so. that's a pretty good thing, and from that point, like people from other countries started looking at what's actually going on and how they do their things, and the people in charge in Rwanda actually do it pretty smart, I think, because they just don't want to use our system to do their government things, but they're having a government-run program to build a digital industry. This is something that like I've never seen that in Europe. It's like the government understands that you need people specialized in IT, and they can now build that industry from the ground up. And at the same time, they had this training program where it was like either 20 or 40 people, but I think it was 20. So 20 people should receive proper training in TYPO3. 10 people were to be employed by the government so that the government would still be able to work autonomously without like getting external consultants in. The other 10 people had to be from the open industry, from the open market of Rwanda, so that they can build these things and build up the knowledge and like elevate basically the entire country digitally. So that's really interesting. And I love how pragmatic that approach is, because if you think about it, it's so obvious to do it just that way. It makes so much sense.
Right. Build up. And I think that's an incredible open source story, right? Take this technology that's available to you, assure your own independence and sustainability first, while building an economic initiative to help your country and your population and going from there. Without and then because you're not paying license fees to Redmond or to all of the usual suspects, right? You get the money spent inwards in the country and developing your own population and your own economy. That's a fantastic open source outcome.
Absolutely.
I would love to talk with some people from down there about how that's going. That's super interesting.
Yeah. Other things that we do support with TYPO3 is I think in Cape Town, which is called Babes Got Bites. It's basically a privately funded school to teach women how to code, and it's all women from townships. So everybody who's not fortunate or not in a just as fortunate position can then learn how to grow out of poverty, pretty much.
Terrific.
And it's currently it's pretty sad because South Africa and especially all the townships have been hit pretty hard by Corona. So the last request was whether they can use our funding just to buy food. And we were just like, it's really tough. It's really tough. And we were just like, hey, sure, go ahead, like no problem. Don't even bother to ask, right? So this is something we're going to take a look. And other stuff we do is that we are currently building a program for all the agencies that we are in touch with. Like they're exchanging all their IT hardware every 2 years on average. And we are just trying to collect all that hardware and just send it down to some place in Africa so that we can give it to a kid, so the kid has a shot at the future.
Sure. Yeah, I have friends who are getting rid of their 2016 laptops just because, right? There's absolutely nothing wrong with it.
But the important thing is that, like, even then, you should just hand it in, send it down there, and we will then take care of stuff like taxes and customs and all those things. And there's
so is this then generally for people in IT who are listening to us? The TYPO3 GmbH, the TYPO3 community has an outlet to help people in developing places get the equipment needed to have open source IT careers and businesses.
Pretty much, yeah. And there's also the contact we have in Kenya, in Nairobi, where they're trying to get kids off the street. And it sounds so Hollywood, right? But it's how it is. So they're trying to get kids off the street. And
so can people contact you? Can people contact you at the GmbH about this, or how should they? If they want to.
No, people can just get in touch with us, and we'll take care of the rest. And it's, I mean, if you take a look at that, Udur he's running, I think, 100 students per year. So he's doing 25 students per quarter, and the total cost for his entire endeavor is like $6,000 US, which technically means like you invest
a year
$5. You invest $5 per month to give somebody a shot at the future, and I think that's definitely worth it.
I think it's such a privilege for us. We've fallen into this weird piece of the technology sector, and there are so many ways to extend this concept into helping people with just thinking one step further and one step ahead. If we can give them our old laptop, then we have all the software in the world that they need to do anything, to help their own country, to help the whole world. That sort of thing is fantastic. It's fantastic.
What really struck me was, what do you think is the most important thing they need for an IT school in Nairobi? What do you think?
Wi-Fi.
Furniture. We're talking office chairs. We're talking desks. We're talking like small containers. We're talking cupboards, stuff like that. That's the things they miss the most. because they're very humble. They can say, I can work with like a 10-year-old laptop. Yeah, it's not fast, but it still does its job. But
Yep.
if you would have like a table or two, that would really help us out, because then we can onboard two more pupils per quarter. And I was like, yeah, that kind of makes sense.
All right. Okay, so there are lots of opportunities to make a big difference with very moderate means.
Yeah.
Shifting gears a little, what is the coolest thing you've ever built with TYPO3?
I think the coolest thing I've built was a system for just plain data entry, and the result was a 600-page spare part catalog for electronics.
Cool.
And the entire idea was that editors could just type in the data. I think nowadays you would call it like a PIM, like a product information system,
or an ERP, right? Something
like that. But back in the day, it was like, because you had to attach photos of whatever, some transistor or something, or a switch, things like that. And they would put in all the data, and then they could basically preview that in the browser. And from that, we were creating like PDF previews that then like the proofreaders would read, and after that was just a flick of a button, and we would print like, I think it was 60,000 printed catalogs per quarter, because it had to be updated, because basically by the time you had it printed, it was already outdated.
Exactly, because it was on paper.
Yeah, and that was a real fun thing. Other weird things I've seen a parking garage management system powered entirely by TYPO3. So the thing that would actually light up the LEDs on top of the parking spot, that would go red if it was like your dedicated parking spot. Then you could just like park there. I've seen ticket vending machines for trains, for state operated trains built in TYPO3. Right. That was weird.
Is it the entertainment system on one of the cruise lines?
Oh yeah. There's that's but that's also that's a simple thing. So all the AIDA home entertainment systems, that's like powered by a TYPO3 thing.
Right.
That's also fun thing. Yeah. No, I think that pretty much sums it up. Back in the day, Jan Hendrik built the entire server management interface with TYPO3. So you could have like records within a TYPO3 backend, like DNS and vhost and TYPO3 version, and it would all just automate things.
In the end, you have a system that is for managing data, right? Whatever data, whatever kind of management. Right. And TYPO3's always been relatively agnostic about the output formats, which has made it flexible the whole time. What is your favorite feature of TYPO3?
Multi-language.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Talk about how it does multi-language handling.
Well, I mean, it's easy to translate some piece of content, right? You just go like, well, I have my text in French, and now I translate it to English, and I'm good. The devil's in the detail here. So if you take a look at something like a timeline, you would have something like, it's Monday and we got the French text and it's ready. And then it's Tuesday and the translator translates it to English. We're good. What happens if there's now changes to the French version? We now need to inform the translator to the English language that something has changed after the translation was done, and maybe something needs to be updated here. Please check that. And this is something that TYPO3 does really well, because you get like this diff view on your content, so that you can see like, this was the original version, this has been added, this has been removed, and it speeds up the process for translators and editors alike. And this is like super helpful.
And there's a notification system built around that too. So it's not that I have to go and look in there.
Nope. No. That's third party. It's not based on core yet.
Okay.
But nice. This is just something that really helps me out in the day-to-day work. So this is one of the coolest things I've seen yet.
Of course, just one or two or three languages, we imagine that that's not so much, and we can handle it and whatever. But anyone who's worked in translation, anytime you get beyond about 3 versions of something, the complexity, is the order of magnitude bigger every time. And then
I'm just logging into typo3.com right now, just to see, so that I don't give you the wrong. Yeah, but typo3.com runs in 10 languages right now. So we have like English, which is obvious, and then it's like Spanish, Hindi, Danish, Norwegian, Swedish, French, Italian, Polish, Dutch, and German. So
Yeah.
and to keep all those things in sync, like you really need a system that supports that. It's tricky because when you talk about like, does your system support something? It's as a developer or an IT focused person, it's like a binary decision whether it is capable of doing something or not. But supporting someone, that's a different story. And
Right.
I
Is
think
it easy to use? Does it make sense? Is it sustainable over time? Right.
Well, first and foremost, does it help a human being?
Okay.
To me, that's like the most important question to ask when you're building software. Does that help a human?
Right. Not does your code manage that somehow, but
yeah.
Can we get our jobs done better? Sure, that's a great, and I think that fits a lot of the UI and UX perspective in the TYPO3 backend. I have such a strong feeling that it's the choices around the hierarchy and working in the page tree and the backend modules are to support day-to-day content and admin workflows first, and not developer workflows first. And I like.
Well, we had quite a few years where the entire mantra was to have like developer happiness, but at a certain point we just swapped that.
I remember that backend. I remember that backend, and I didn't used to say what I'm saying now. So
no, but everything was small, so the amount of kilometers that you run with your mouse each month was really low, and the buttons are bigger. The good thing is people can now actually see them, and it's no longer the hit or miss thing.
I have a little segment here on the podcast that I'm calling the Suggest a Guest, and I'd like you to suggest a couple of 3 people who, 1, 2, 3, 10, someone that I should speak with, someone who would be interesting and worth getting to know, and not Benny Mac, because that's everyone's first answer.
From the TYPO3 community or in general?
Well, I think that this podcast can and should be with people relevant to TYPO3 in any way. So if, not just TYPO3 directly, whomever you think.
I would say Thomas Norre, the Dane living in Germany. That's definitely someone. I'd say Taco from Yoast, because he's like a really, really smart person. Who else?
And we'd talk with him about SEO and about the overall market and the different CMSs that Yoast works with and so on, right?
I'd suggest that. That would definitely make sense. I would say Susie Moog, but I'm not sure whether she's up for podcasting. So just so when she
challenge accepted.
Yeah, right. And if she asks who notified or who challenged her, just like say it wasn't me.
It's the ice bucket challenge now. I get it.
Pretty much, yeah.
I survived an hour with jam, and I challenge. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me. I don't know where to work it in, so I'll just keep it just in case. But full disclosure, your company is a client of my company. I don't think that that's made any huge difference to the conversation we're having, but
nope.
But there it is. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me, and all of your activities and thinking and contribution. I'm really proud to be in a community of open source thinkers and people out there doing and making a difference. So thanks for everything that you do too.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matthias. Have a good one.
You too.
Thanks to the TYPO3 Association for sponsoring this podcast. Thank you B13 and Stephanie Kreutzer for our logo. Merci beaucoup Patrick Gaumont, TYPO3 developer and musician extraordinaire, for our theme music. Thanks again to today's guest. If you like what you heard, don't forget to subscribe in the podcast app of your choice and share Application, the TYPO3 community podcast, with your friends and colleagues. If you didn't like it, please share it with your enemies. Would you like to play along and suggest a guest for the podcast? Do you have questions or comments? Reach out to us on Twitter at TYPO3Podcast. You can find show notes, links, and more information in our posts on typo3.org. Remember, open source software would not be what it is without you. Thank you all for your contributions.
Hey,
for
how
work.
is your new car?
Annoying,
Really?
but fun, I guess.
So I really want one. Tell me the annoying part.
I mean, for me, it still kind of works, but I mean, I've been to your apartment in Cologne, tried to figure out how to get the car on Wi-Fi.